We are now recording. You have missed your opportunity to share all of your secrets because now everyone will hear it. Welcome everyone to our next class for the curious musicians. I'm so happy y'all are here. I know that my camera says that my name is Dixie, but my name is actually Anna Huthmaker. I stole my mom's Zoom. That is not Buddy, that is Dixie. So for those of you that are new to the classes, we are Huthmaker Violins. We're a family violin shop, and we love all music and we love all musicians, but we have a very special place in our heart for adult amateurs. And we noticed when COVID hit that all y'all stuff got canceled and that you just were not having enough opportunity to meet each other and learn stuff. So we created this series. If you have not heard about it before, this is our second set of 8. The first set we did before Christmas, and they all are on the Huthmaker Violins YouTube channel. Go check them out. They're amazing. It's every single kind of topic you can possibly imagine. And we're so excited about this second series of 8. Couple of housekeeping things. So I'm not very technologically good. And tonight we're going to be screen sharing. I'll do my best. So if I'm a little clumsy, just forgive me. Marta will be giving you amazing information, so it won't matter. I'll keep you muted. Raise your hand. Oh, if you have questions, put them in the chat box. But what we're going to try and do tonight is let Marta do her presentation first, and then we're going to try and answer all the questions. Speaking of that chat box, Marta has already put in some links and her email address, which that's the important thing to know, because after tonight, you're going to want to follow her YouTube channel, which is amazing, and maybe buy some of her CDs. Do you still have CDs for sale, Marta?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I am done talking, I think, for right now. I'm sure I've left some stuff out, but nothing that's important. So just let me introduce to you. So for those of you who don't know the Huthmaker family, we are Mississippi people. Both of my parents are all from Mississippi. And one day we were lucky enough to meet Marta Szlubowska. Did I say it right?
Slubovska.
Szlubowska.
Very close, very close.
Szlubowska. She is the concert violinist. She is the concert master of the Mississippi Symphony Orchestra, and she teaches at universities there. And we have lots of people in common. And that's how we met her. And it's been really amazing to watch you and all the things you've done. So thank you, Marta. We're glad you're here. She's going to actually play for us first, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you, Dixie, and everybody. Welcome. My name is Marta Szlubowska. I'm originally from Poland. I've been in this country a lot of my life since I was in college. And I am so lucky to be in Mississippi. And I met Huthmakers at their store, actually. I drove up there, and I was just had such a good time trying different instruments and just chatting and having my bows done. And it's been a while, but I hope to go back.
Marta, I did forget one housekeeping thing for you. Yeah. Do you have on your upper left hand corner, do you have your original sound turned on? It's a little blue button.
Oh.
Turn that on because it'll make your violin sound 1,000 times better. Ivan taught me this. So.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you. I'll have to do that. All right. So I'll play just a little piece for you, and this is the piece we're actually going to look at later for memorizing, the Beethoven Minuet. Just a little sweet little piece. So here you go, a little sweet piece. I hope you enjoyed it. So it's kind of funny to have everybody quiet. All right. So thank you again for having me, Anna and family. This is an honor, and I hope I give you some tips that you may use in your future practice. So I came up with this idea of memory because I think it is so important for many reasons. And I've always learned things from memory, and I always encourage all my students. And I come from a family, musical family. My parents are both musicians, concert pianists. My mom is still living, and she's 84, and she still practices from memory. She plays about 200 pieces from memory, and she practices every day, 2-3 hours. Whenever she, if she feels tired or something, she'll do less. But so she taught me so many things about that. So let me. I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but I'm trying to be organized to give you some real information here. So let's consider why memorization of music is important. I'm sure you all have different reasons, and maybe some of you love doing it, some of you hate doing it, some of you are kind of lukewarm about it. But to give you some more ammunition to be encouraged to do more memorization is several reasons. Memorizing helps you have greater artistic freedom and can lead you to also gain some improvisational skills. Let's say you playing something from memory and just even a melody, and then you can kind of play around on it, improvise on it. Or let's say you're performing on stage and you have done it many times from memory, and then suddenly something you're not doing so well, right? Something happens. Well, you could maybe improvise. There are ways to get around these things when you have that skill of doing the memory from memory a lot, and spending really time practicing it. Another reason for memorizing is that audiences seem to connect better with performers who play by heart. And think about the term by heart, right? There's a reason for it. Because it connects you more to your heart, connects you more to your soul, to how you want to express the music, not only thinking about the notes. So you want to get to a point in your memorization that you are very comfortable. You don't want to be playing it in the short-term memory and just kind of being on the edge, right? Because then you can't access that heart part. My mom, Danuta Szlubowska, we're all from Poland, and my mom was trained, she told me yesterday, in a system called Leimer. I wrote it in the notes here. I'm looking here. Gieseking, Leimer, not Leimer. Leimer and Gieseking, who were the pianists, famous pianists, and they wrote a book about silent memorization or silent practice. And so my mom learned that system, and it basically has to do with really remembering, looking at all the details of the music. So like really in-depth looking. And my mom also says that to tell everybody that memorizing music is really good for your brain because you won't get Alzheimer's. That's what she said. And maybe that's true, I don't know. But she has amazing memory, and she's 84 and plays, like I said, 200 pieces from memory, because that's how she teaches also her students. So memory is extremely important. And imagine losing your memory. That is one of the core characteristics of a human being, and you want to train your memory constantly. You want to keep it alive, keep it trained. And then another reason for memorizing is that you understand the music better, you enjoy it better, you enjoy the workings of what composer wrote. You get into that world of understanding more what you're playing. You're more connected to the music and to the audience. So I hope that's enough reasons for you to really dig into memorizing and not be afraid of it. There are 4 types of memory. Just to be a little bit scientific here, this is such a vast topic. There's actually many other kinds of memory that I'm going to mention. You can research it yourself, but there are 4 main ones that we use in music. Muscle memory, auditory memory, visual memory, and cognitive memory. So let's just discuss each one a little bit. Muscle memory, motor memory is another name for it, is pretty obvious. It's something that we use in daily life, right? Tying your shoes or driving a car or whatever. You have the muscle memory of that event, of that activity, and you don't have to think about it, where to put your foot or how to hold the wheel. All those things have been repeated thousands of times, and we don't have to think about it anymore. So it's a basic skill that we need in order for us to play the music, either from memory or from the music as well. Muscle memory is required for us to place fingers in the right order, on the right string, and not to have to think about it. Because we don't have frets on the string instruments we play, violin, viola, cello, and bass, that adds another challenge of placing fingers correctly. That's why it's so important to place them correctly from the beginning as you're reading the piece, as much as possible. Lots of actual practice is required to develop the muscle memory and motor skills. Not having frets creates a requirement of not only active muscle memory, which is actual movement, but also the listening-oriented muscle memory. So ear training, knowing your scales, arpeggios as much as you can. I know it sometimes can be boring, but just do a little bit even is good. Associating muscle memory with the ear training. So training your ear and also knowing the keys you're using, knowing the arpeggios, and then listening to music, recordings, also training your ear that way. And here's a kind of a cool quote that I found on a website called String Ovation to express how we memorize. The first time you played an A major scale on your own, you delighted in the muscle memory you developed with accurate pitches. It was a proof that your brain used repeated practice times to hone white, gray, and other neural connections in your brain to create a dizzyingly complex series of physiological responses. These responses made your fingers, wrists, hands, and arms do exactly what they are supposed to do. So it's something that we have to practice. And you all know that if you play an instrument, you know what the muscle memory is. Okay, second type of memory is auditory memory. And this is the one that I think I like the most. I think we all like auditory memory, the listening, the actual listening part of it, the melody and all that. So it's important to listen to high quality performances on regular basis. Ear training, singing, solfege or note, the other note naming, humming the music you play. Singing and humming will help you find also the natural flow of the music, phrasing, emphasis, tension, and release of the music, the character of it. Now that we have YouTube, and we've had it for a while, but now we have so many recordings, it can be very, very useful for ear training and just auditory memory. Just remember, and so to take advantage of it, but just remember that you are the one that has to play and practice. So don't rely solely, oh, I listened to a recording, it's all good, Make sure that you're the one also training yourself. More you develop your ear, the better your intonation, sound quality, color, dynamics, rhythms, emotion, and character you wish to create. So listening to recordings, I always, I have students now at University of Southern Mississippi, and with YouTube around, it is still very difficult to convince them that they can take advantage of it in a sense that they can listen to the recordings. I'm just surprised that they don't enough, because it's very easy to make mistakes, silly mistakes sometimes, if you don't have a sense of what the piece sounds like, and especially listening, to the entire piece when it has accompaniment, etc. Okay, third type of memory is visual memory. So everybody has a different way it's developed, how far it's developed. I talked to my daughter who plays viola, and she said visual memory is a big part of her playing from memory. She pictures the page, she can see, the notes and everything. And I was kind of the first time I heard that from her, and I was like, wow, that's cool. And so we can visualize the score or the positions on the instrument. And my mom actually talks a lot about picturing, visualizing the motions, all the motions, you know, like on the violin would be the bowings, the fingerings here, and the notes. So she teaches her students to close their eyes and visualize things before they play. So that's a very, very important aspect of our memory. If you don't have that type of memory developed, meditation is good. You can visualize things when you meditate. But with music, you can do several things. You can write the music down. So practice writing the music and then looking at it and visualizing. You can take a snapshot of the measure that you are learning, for example, and close your eyes and try to see it in your mind's eye. More time you spend studying the music, clearer the picture will be. So don't just read through it and read through it fast. You know, take time, spend a lot of time. It will pay off. You can also look at your hands and fingers as you are playing from memory. That can help you visualize also. Imagine yourself playing the music. You can imagine moving your bow, like I said, or your left hand fingers, and imagine the fingerings and the direction, shifting or whatever it is that you're memorizing. Okay, and now the fourth type of memory is cognitive memory. So that is probably the one that is the most neglected because it's the most intellectual. It takes the most time and patience. And this is the Leimer Gieseking method, I think, uses a lot of that understanding type, really understanding the music you're playing. So it's important to have some basic knowledge of theory. You know, some people, you know, students even who learn theory in their classes, they hate thinking about theory, but, and I did too, I'm sure at that age. But more I play and more I realize how important it is and how important it is to keep improving your knowledge of music theory. Because then, you know, you can describe things better and remember them better. Learn as much as possible about the music you're playing, you're studying in terms of what's on the page, such as tempo, character, meter, keys, style, articulation, dynamics, bowings, patterns, harmonies, melody, where the melody is, structure, overall structure of the piece, and different sequences. So that cognitive memory is very, very important. That's actually how my mom teaches, is really going through all the details. All right. So that's the basics of the four types of memory: muscle memory, auditory memory, visual memory, and cognitive memory. So like with everything in life, preparation is the key, especially when we're committing music to memory. We will also memorize much better if we have some strategies and work not only hard, but smart. For best results, the best way to memorize is to use all four types of memory. So if you never thought of it that way, like you memorize by ear or you memorize by looking at the page, consider using all four. And you probably are. If you are performing from memory anything, you probably are using all four at some point. Let's say you forget the fingering and suddenly your muscle memory kicks in, or you forget what it feels like, you suddenly visualize the page, or you know, you can have all these backup memory types help you out. There's a saying that says repetition is mother of skill and practice makes perfect. I want to just alter it slightly and say correct repetition is a mother of skill and perfect practice makes perfect. So just remember how important it is to start on the right foot and understand everything from the start. Don't just read wrong notes, and you know, it's so much harder to correct it later. And you get it in your ear too, wrong, and then you're in trouble. So understanding the music and how our brains memorize is very crucial. There are many ways to memorize. Here are some strategies that you can try. So like I mentioned, the Leimer Gieseking one system that I actually just found out from my mom. I've heard of the two gentlemen, but I've never studied that book. It's actually called Piano Technique by Walter Gieseking and Karl Leimer. So I'm sure it's a fascinating read, and it can give you some more ideas for memorizing and how the brain works. So some strategies. Again, take time to study the music thoroughly. Take bar the time. Be sure you know everything about what you're seeing on the page, including, all the little details. Longer you study the score, better you will remember it. There are some games you can play. For example, I was reading on a website recently about something called two-chair method. And when I started reading about it, I realized that I did that when I was a kid. My dad would teach me in that method to memorize. What it is maybe some of you have heard of this two-chair method. It doesn't have to be chairs, but it's just that's how they named it. You have one area, let's say chair number one, and then you have chair number two. In chair number one is where you're going to play from memory, and chair number two is where your music stand is with your music. So it should be, a few feet apart so you cannot see the music from that chair number one. And what you do is you look at the page in that chair number two, and you spend 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, whatever it takes for you. Let's say you're working on a one measure. Start with one measure or two measures, and you analyze every detail about it: the tempo, the sequences, the notes, the fingerings, the bowings, and you just stare at it. Stare at it for as long as you need to, and then we can hum it to yourself, sing it to yourself, and then you move over to the chair number one and you play it. Now, if you play it correctly, great, play it a few times. If you play it incorrectly, I would still encourage you to not go back to that other chair, but keep finding it. So this is where your improvisational skills can come in too. If the passage is really complex and you're still going, oh, it's this note, but one of the memories is gonna kick in. So you can, maybe your auditory memory will kick in suddenly. It's like, oh, that's what it sounded like, because you looked at the page and you hummed it, etc. So spending more time in chair number one where you have it memorized or where you don't see the music is best, even if you feel like it's not quite great. If you really cannot remember anything, you go back and you study it some more. But I just remember doing that a lot. And my mom is a great proponent of students. She gets students, for example, forgets a phrase, and they just want to go and look at the music right away. It's like, no, you have it in there. It's in there. Just search, keep trying. So it's like improvising in a way, right? But it's in there. It's in one of those memories. You probably have it. If it's not enough time, then you go back and look at the music. But don't just give up. So that's one exercise you can do, one method. To get the music in your ear, you can also use the piano. I played piano throughout high school and always used the piano to help me out with harmonies, especially since violin or string instruments are mostly melodic instruments. We need to be more aware. If we can all play piano a little bit, that's always a good idea. There are many artists, including Nathan Milstein or Oistrakh or any people from that old generation, and I'm sure the younger generation does it too, is they can accompany themselves. There's actually a video of this violinist, famous violinist. I can't remember his name right now, but he actually played Chrysler piece on the piano. It's one of those digital things, duets with himself, and then he played it on the violin. But it's very, very important to know, what the accompaniment is doing, and that's how all the great musicians study, is they study the score. You can also sing the music to yourself. That's very, very important to have this auditory memory developed. Another exercise you can do is write the music down, like I said earlier. And I came upon a little exercise, and you can alter it any way you want to, is using a large piece of staff paper, cutting it in 4 pieces. And so you have four small pieces of paper where you can even name each piece of paper on the other side, like what excerpt you want to learn. Let's say it's from Moonlight Sonata or something, you call it the Moonlight theme, or you can call it the funny theme, or the bird theme, or whatever. And then you, it could be 1 measure, could be 3 measures, could be 5 measures, whatever your memory at that point is. And you just, you can rewrite it from the music with all the details, like really, really well. So it's good to be able to write notes too. practice your treble clef and your sharps and all that. And then, so you can write it down. Let's say it's a couple of measures, like really exactly with all the accents, the fingerings, the comments, and all that. And then you can copy it to the other piece of paper, or you can just memorize it from what you wrote already. But you can also copy it. Copying it is going to make it, ingrained in your memory even more. So you can do exercises like that, writing down. I remember when I would go to big competitions like Sibelius or Queen Elizabeth, I wrote a lot of my Bach on staff paper. I have still my entire fugues written out from memory. So, and it's like necessary, when you have to play it under pressure. And when you just starting memorizing, just start with a very short piece, very easy, something maybe you have it in your ear already, but try to add to that auditory memory, try to add the cognitive memory and the muscle memory, so that you have all those memories strengthening your performance. Another idea is listening to recordings. I already said that. Making sure that you read the piece correctly from the start. There are a lot of musicians, and especially in the past, when people would travel a lot, like a long time, for days sometimes, on the train from concert to concert, like Chrysler or probably Auer or some other musicians like that, pianists, famous pianists, they would study their music just from the score. They would not even get to touch their instrument. And that's another thing my mom does a lot, is really teaching the students to look at the music that way. And you can just sit down with the score, pencil, highlight things, whatever. And I have a couple of testimonials later from a couple of students who will tell you they do that too. Listening to recordings, even if you don't have a teacher, for example, listening to a recording would be great, because that will make you hear the piece if you don't have a teacher who can demonstrate for you. If you're new at memorizing as well, train your ear that way, and you will avoid possible mistakes. Mistakes are not so bad, except when you learn them and then they stick and then you can't get rid of them. I have students like that too, that even though they know that's the wrong note, they just keep playing it. So it just, you just want to be very, very diligent about that. All right, couple more things. Visual memory. To increase visual memory, watching your fingers is helpful. That connects you to the neural pathways in your brain. You can close your eyes and visualize yourself playing without the instrument also. That's another great exercise. Take a snapshot of the segment that you're learning, close your eyes and try to see all the details, keys, tempo, dynamics, fingerings, articulations, and just play it in your mind. It takes practice. Sometimes I even lay in bed, falling asleep, and I will go through a piece in my mind. And you probably do that too. Some of you may already have experienced that. Or even going to a concert before the concert, and I'm like, oh, I need to review this little section, and I'm in the car and I'm still thinking, just to make sure that cognitive part is also strong. After you memorize the section, there's another interesting idea that I read from somebody that suggested to practice from memory in either closing their eyes or in a dark room, so you can get in touch more with your intuition. And all you have in the dark is the sound and the touch. So you don't have the visual, and so you are more attuned into those two senses, the sound, the touch. And that will be heightened, and you can connect more with the music in kind of an intuitive, inspired way. So you may want to experiment with that as well. Another interesting thing that my mom summarized here, she said there are 4 different ways you can practice memory, just kind of very similar to each other, but also very different. First, with the instrument and with the music. So you can practice it by looking at the music and playing and connecting all that. You can practice without the instrument, only with the music. So you study the score with the pencil in hand, and you just mark things like where the sequences are, where the half steps are, or whatever you need to mark, but go very slowly and diligently. The third way is with instrument and with no music. So that's from memory. And the fourth way is without the instrument and without the music. So that would be that old old way that musicians used to do, especially while traveling, just studying the music. Um, so those are 4 ways that she suggested. There's one more interesting term that I came upon called chunking. I don't know if any of you have heard of chunking. It basically means that you memorize in chunks as opposed to each note individually, which we probably already do intuitively because, like, okay, I see a scale, so I'm going to think of it as a scale. Or I have a rhythm that repeats itself. Okay, that's a chunk, right? So maybe you haven't thought of that, but sometimes we don't even see things that are most obvious, right? And then smaller chunks can become larger chunks, phrases, sections, parts of a movement, like exposition or development if you're talking about big structures. And there's no right or wrong way to chunk, okay? Some ways may make more sense than others. For example, instead of chunking by measure, let's say you see a measure, but it somehow you're having trouble remembering the measure. Well, maybe there's one more note over the next measure that creates a chunk. So you could have a scale that goes all the way to the top and it ends on that next measure. So you would chunk it that way. That would be easier for you to remember than trying to stop it at the bar line. So you can do it with groups of notes, arpeggios, harmonically, you can chunk harmonically, rhythmically, patterns of rhythms, and melodically, if there's a sequence, let's say 2, 3, 4, 5 notes in a particular arrangement, and then it gets duplicated in a different key or on a different level of a scale. So that's a sequence. So you can, those would be chunks as well. All right. And just a couple more ideas to think about is simplify your learning. So sometimes I will have a student that will try to remember bowings and fingerings and chords and everything all at the same time. And it's sometimes easier to just address one thing. So for example, I love practicing silently. So just left hand alone and just feeling, muscle memory, but you can also use your cognitive memories like, okay, this is A, B, C, whatever the notes are. So left hand, but also shifting. Even if you're not shifting perfectly, you're still learning that habit of shifting. So practicing left hand alone, right hand alone, you can practice bow by itself, and that would, you will remember it from muscle memory. That would be really useful. So then memorize each part separately, for example. You can, if you have trouble with rhythms, you can hum it or clap the rhythm. So that could be your separate thing to learn, to remember. Play a melody on the piano and sing. Those are things that I keep repeating because they're very, very useful. Counting out loud is another good one. Let's say you're playing a rhythm and you're having trouble with the rhythm. You can learn how to count while you play. That's kind of an extra little skill, but you'll see my student here wrote some interesting things about memorizing. That it helped him to work on a particular problem. When you find a problem, let's say you have double stops or something that's difficult or a fast passage, it's better to learn it from memory, like right away, and just study it and then practice it without looking at the music, because then you can really address it and find out, get into your creative side as to what other ways you can practice it rather than just keep staring at the music. All right. And then I have just a little, if I can find it. You can all start thinking about questions, although I'm still would like to show you some music and work on that a little bit. Okay, I'm trying to find my last piece of paper. Forgive me. Okay. Okay, I don't know what happened to it. Oh, here.
Marta,
okay.
while you're doing that, which piece of music do you want me to pull up first?
Let's do the Minuet in G.
Okay, because I'll be working on that.
Okay. And I don't know if this is too easy for you guys. You tell me. If you want me to talk about a harder piece, I can, because I have several pieces. But I just wanted to summarize from all that memory thing, all this information is by studying thoroughly your music and using all 4 types of memory, we will be able to then move that piece, memorized piece, from short memory to long-term memory. And then you can enjoy memorizing more and more and more. That's another thing I just wanted to mention. Like my mom, she has 200 pieces memorized, and she will still study them. Sometimes she'll forget something, or finger will slip, and she'll have to look at the music, and it's like, okay, and you refer to the music as well. But it brings so much joy. I also have about 100. I don't have as many as hers. I got to work on that. But because she's a little bit older than me. But I have about 100 pieces, I guess, from memory. And I just keep, it's such a joy to be able to do that, because I don't have to be searching for scores. And I think it also, I can stand and play, for an hour or two, just playing pieces from memory for somebody I want to share the music with. And so it's just very, very important for our psychic and our confidence to keep working on that memory. I think it's really, really important. So I would like to, I'm assuming that you would like me to show you how to look at the score. So let's do that Beethoven Minuet.
Can you see it?
Yeah, can you all see it? It's a little pale, but maybe it's good enough, right? You can kind of see the fingerings, but maybe we don't need to talk about fingerings. So this is obviously, I just played this piece for you, as you I'm sure recognize. And it's actually in book 2 of Suzuki, but I love this piece, and I don't care that it's not that difficult, because comparing to Paganini Caprice or something, but people love listening to these kind of pieces, and I always share this one with audiences. So, all right, so to give you an example of all these different types of memory, and how we can look at the music. So first we look at all the markings you see. So allegretto, so that's a tempo marking, right? So we'll make sure that we have that in our mind, that it's going to have to be kind of a lively but not really fast piece. So that's the first thing. Obviously, this is a very famous piece, so you don't need to listen to a recording necessarily. But if it's not, you may want to listen to a recording to see. There's certain things on the recording that we don't necessarily need to reinvent. Okay, so especially if it's something contemporary that's recorded, then maybe you may have a problem, like you may miss a note or accidental or something. It's good to listen to a recording. Okay, so then we have a tempo marking. We're obviously in treble clef, unlike cello or bass, it will be in a different clef. We have those key signature, sharps, flats, so we have to make sure that we look at that. And if you are new at memorizing or playing in general, that is an extremely important aspect of playing, obviously, is to know what scale we're playing. So in this case, it's in G major. We have 1 sharp. Now you may ask also, it could be in minor, right? Because each major scale, each major key has a relative minor. So you can't assume that it's going to be G major with 1 sharp. It could be an E minor. But we look, at different indications. The last note is a G, and we have, once we start singing it or playing it, we hear that it's in a major key. Okay, then we look at the pickup. You have a pickup, right? So for example, I will look at that first measure and a half, maybe, whatever the chunk you think you can memorize. So look at the meter, right? So we have 3/4. Now, good idea would be to find out what a minuet is, if it's a piece or a dance or based on some opera, or I don't know, whatever the piece is based on. It's good to know about what it is. If it's minuet, it's a dance in 3. We have a marking piano. We have in the next measure it says con grazia, right? So we need to know what that means with grace or gracefully. And then we start looking at the notes. So we have that pickup. So the bowings is another aspect we want to look at. And also articulation. So we have slurs, right? We have that pickup slur with an up bow. So that's something to da da da. You can practice just the bowing, pa da pa da pam pa pam pa pam. And some of you may not be familiar with that kind of hooked bowing. As you can see underneath it, there has a big slur on the entire measure, but that's not really a bowing. That's not realistic, right? So, I mean, playing a down bow like that and then playing up bow on that next measure, which really musically is an arrival point. So that's another thing to figure out, is how the music is organized. You know, that there is a direction, right? So if there's a pickup, that means that the downbeat is somewhere we're going to arrive. So ding ta tam, and the composer writes little accents there. So that's another thing you want to pay attention to, is the accents. All right, then we look at how the melody is organized, right? Is it a scale? Is it a skip? Is it a half step? Is it a whole step? So knowing a little bit of that kind of theory is good. So for example, I was just even looking at it today and going, well, if it's somebody really new at this kind of thing and playing violin in general, they may not realize that first two notes are half step and that C natural, we have that C natural, and then the next measure turns into C sharp. So we have that adjustment of that second finger. Somebody may not notice, may kind of play it both kind of like C or kind of like C sharp, right? But we've got to make sure that there is that big difference. So between B and C, we have a half step, and then whole step, and then D to C sharp is another half step. So Beethoven has moved that, put that C sharp there. All right, so let's say I'm doing the chair thing, the chair game. So I'm just going to study it, and let's say I play up to that second full measure. So I could close my eyes and try to picture what I just saw with that pickup, you know, and then I have that whole step we said. You know, and slowly but surely you can progress that way. So just really make sure you're reading everything that's on the page. I don't remember last time I looked at music quite this exactly, but this is fun. I'm enjoying it. So I don't know if you want me to keep going. I'll be happy to keep going. How are we on time? 7:15. Wait a minute. 6:30. Oh, we have time. We have time. Okay, so let's just finish this section. So in addition to the intervals that I just analyzed, we also have some chunking, right? When you look at that first full measure, do you see that you have the same pattern 3 times? So these could be 3 chunks, or it could be 1 chunk of the same rhythm, same notes 3 times, right? The only thing that's different, even fingerings are the same, everything is the same except for the bowings. So then if you're having trouble with that bowing, that's what you need to practice. Dam, pa pam, pa pam. And there's that little separation on that up and up, because ideally it should be ta ra ta ra ta ra tam, or ta ra ta. I don't like that big slur. That's just a phrase marking. I don't think it's intended as a bowing. So the best bowing is the way I bowed it, just because the second full measure is the arrival point, right? So when you go, so you want this to be a down bow, rather than that just doesn't, it works against you to do that way. So then we have the next 2 measures, which then will conclude our first phrase, the 4-measure phrase. And you can see already that there is a rhythmic similarity, right? So we have this pattern of rhythm: half note, dotted 8 and a 16th, half note, dotted 8 and a 16th, right? So we can chunk it by measure in this case, or as both measures together. So the difference is in the notes. So it's also a sequence. It's a pattern in rhythm, but it's also a musical sequence, right? Melodic sequence. So we go, then we go up a step, and then we do the same thing again. So we have whole step and then a fourth. Then we have a step, half step in this case. But then here's another whole step. So it's the same intervals, right? Whole step, fourth. Then we go up a step, which is actually a step lower than the previous bar. And then another fourth, in this case on open string. So here we have two patterns. We have patterns, and we have rhythmic pattern, and we have melodic sequence. So that makes it even easier to remember, right? And then the last note is the end of that first short phrase. Okay, so then you look at the next four measures. Since you already analyzed the first four measures, maybe the next four measures may be just a little bit easier, because we have some repetition. We have the same bowings. We have the same rhythm. We are on a different note, so we have like this little sequence, right? Between measure 1 and measure 4 and 5, we have a sequence, right? So the same intervals pretty much, except for that first two notes are whole step instead of half step. All right, so then in measure 6, now we have a little bit of a change. We still have a half note like we had in second full measure, so that's similar. But then on the last beat of that measure 6, we don't have the dotted rhythm anymore. We have just straight eighth notes. So we have to picture that. We have to understand that there's a difference there. And we have some little sequences like A, G, G, F sharp. So that's a little sequence, very short sequence, two notes in the same, next to each other, right? But repeated one after another. And then we have the slurs, which is kind of a sequence as well, or pattern. And then we have four notes slurred together, and goes, you look at the direction of the line, goes up a third step, goes down a third. So it's kind of like a little sequence also, if you were, you know, you look at it, if you were to put two slurs on it, it will be two up, two down, right? But then you smooth it out together. And now we're going to, you all know about harmony a little bit, like theory, like dominant, tonic, dominant. It's good to know some of those terms, because tonic is the chord on the first degree of the scale, and dominant is on the fifth degree of the scale. And it's very common for composers to go from 1 to 5 in the first part, like in Bach pieces or in this short minuet here. So it's good to know that we're going to progress, at least for a brief time, into D major, which is that fifth degree, the dominant. All right, any questions? Anybody has any questions? Because I would like to see if anybody has questions about this, because I don't know how far you want me to go with this.
I have a question, if I can say, and then we'll look to see if anyone else. So
I see some
a
questions.
piece like this is, I was going to ask you my question about Haydn, but this is going to be very much the same. If you have a piece that has similar phrases, or even the same phrase, but just a little difference in the end of each one, and repeats, do you have any like special hints for something like that? Because that's what I really struggle with. Like, I can get, if the phrase repeats itself, I can get that, but knowing that the first time it does something different than the third time and then the fifth time.
Yes. Okay. So it's like first ending, second ending kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Sometimes it repeats, and sometimes it's just. I had a traumatic Haydn C major cello concerto experience when I was in college, and some of it was repeats, but some of it was just this idea that it didn't repeat itself perfectly over and over. Each phrase was 95% the same.
I know.
And it was very difficult.
Yes, yes. Well, all I can say is spend more time on it and really analyze the differences. It just takes time. You may wanna write it out and like have them even on separate pieces of paper, and see and know which one is first, which one is second, which one is third, which one is fourth. And that may be helpful. So forget the part that repeats, right? Just the part that's new. And also ask your questions why. what's happening, what's after it. If you connect it with the part after it, that may also make sense why you're doing that ending. Unless it's the same every time, like it goes back to the same thing, or is it?
No.
Not necessarily, no.
Yeah, not necessarily.
So you could connect it with the next part also, like if it's a B section or something. Yeah, it's a common issue. It's usually when we don't spend enough time on really figuring out the differences, the slightest things, the slightest differences. But there is a particular reason. He's going to D major this time, or he's coming back to C major. Why? Look maybe in also accompaniment part. Why is it happening that way?
I
But
think I never memorized anything cognitively. That's the first, when you start talking about that, spent my whole
yeah.
life, and that is probably the problem right there. So
Yes, you're just doing it by ear or by
yes.
hoping that it will be there. Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to read, before I forget, I wanted to read those two students, I don't know, call them testimonials or descriptions of their processes, because I thought that you may kind of associate with some of those. So one of the students is actually here, right? Jeannie, are you here? Jeannie is here, but she's not showing her face. Anyway, she's my student, my lovely student, adult student. And she wrote this, because I am more accustomed to memorizing a song with words, I try to approach a piece of violin music in the same way. First, I listen to the piece as many times as I need in order to get the structure in my head. How many parts or verses, how many repeats. I didn't really talk about the structure of the whole piece, but yeah, that's very, very important. Where the choruses are or variations. I have to be able to sing it without looking at the music, and then I study the written piece. I always make another copy so I can mark it up. I sing it with the written music and get the notes in my mind until I can see the lines, the timing, the rests. I guess she sings the violin piece. I put bow markings, and sometimes I do them in different colored pencils if it's a difficult part. I may highlight, excuse me, I may highlight each section in a different color to help change the mood. That's really cool. I try to be as familiar with the written music as I am with the melody that I am singing, looking for dynamics and ways to better tell the story. Then the challenge is to put what's in my head into my fingers. I memorize so I can move from the structure of the notes to the expression of what's in my heart. So I thought that was really, really cool, really beautiful. And here's another one, which is a little bit longer. My student surprised me. He's from Peru. He's actually taking lessons. He's in Peru because he wasn't able to come back to USM. So he's in Cusco. Hey, you're here. Good for you. Victor. So Victor wrote a very extensive essay here on memory, but I think you will enjoy it. So he didn't used to memorize pieces when he was younger. He kind of had a little break in his playing. Like what, 5 years or something, Victor? 5 years you didn't play?
Yeah, it was like 4 years.
4 years, uh-huh.
Yeah.
So then he realized that because of being too focused on the score, he didn't like memorizing. I was only playing notes, but not making music. Now I believe that by memorizing a piece, we can get a lot of freedom and flexibility. We can start phrasing and shaping the music more naturally. It also allows you to be quite picky with your intonation. Yes, you listen differently when you play from memory, that's correct. Fixing technical issues like a specific bow technique we have to use or playing perfect fifths on the violin becomes easier. Because since you don't have to be worried about the notes anymore, we hope, now you can drive your attention to the actual problem. So that's what I was saying about how we can work on one problem, and it's good to memorize it so you don't keep looking at the page. So you're just working on the problem or challenge. I also experienced that it is easier to associate a specific passage of the piece with the feeling. We become more aware of the sensations we're experiencing while playing, which helps to deliver a more musical interpretation. I'm relatively new to memorizing. I'll share what works for me. I might sound obvious, but listening is the more natural and easier way to memorize something. So the auditory memory, like the lyrics of a song, for example. What I do is simply have music on my phone and listening to it everywhere I go. I thought that was interesting. And I even started practicing using headphones and following the music. So that would be my first step. Also, if we are playing a concerto or an accompanied piece, without regarding if we memorize our part or not, we have to know and understand the orchestral or piano part and how we fit with it. So we can achieve it by listening while following the score. It also helps us to picture the structure of the piece. Repetition is how we remember things, so practicing in a really calm state of mind is key for me. We have to be careful here because repetition could be done automatically or consciously. I think that this is second step. This second step is where we have to be more aware than ever, because if we learn something wrong, like a wrong note or a wrong dynamic, it will be twice as hard to fix it. But don't beat yourself down every time you can't remember something, because that just stresses you out more. Visualizing is another step that I take. So I start playing the piece as if I'm playing it in a recital or a jury, and whatever I have coming up. I do it by creating the whole atmosphere in my mind in order to not be scared once the actual time to perform arrives. So after spending a decent amount of time listening and practicing, I allow myself to play the piece without stopping, no matter if I have an error. So that way I can easily find where's the weakest part of my performance. Good job. So I have a student like that. Isn't that cool? Both students are very, very much aware of how they memorize. I don't know if I'm not aware of it, but that's very, very good. Okay, so we could look at another piece here, or we could have questions. Do you want me to go through another example of memorizing, or is that enough?
Yeah, let's do another one. And anyone who has a question, type it in the chat box so we can jump in. But let's do another one if you're up for it.
Okay, all right. So let's do the Bach Concerto.
All right.
I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit.
Hold on. Can you see that now? Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so you all see that, okay? So this is a very notey piece, obviously. So some of us may have a little trouble memorizing something like that. So again, we may want to look at this piece a little bit more, since I didn't talk about structure in the other one. When you look at let's say it's the entire movement of the Bach Concerto, you want to know what structure it is if you're about to memorize the entire thing, and know that there are some repetitions, things that will help you out, so you're not feel like you're facing this huge piece of of music, but it actually is about half of it. So what happens is this particular movement is a rondo, which means it repeats. It has a refrain that repeats every 16. Let's see how many. 16 measures. Every 16 measures, we have a new section, and then we return to the refrain after the new section. So, and because it's a Baroque piece from the Baroque era, Bach, the form that was popular at the time was concerto grosso or concerto, but it's really like a concerto grosso because you have the soloist and then you have an orchestra, and the soloist plays both parts. So, but the orchestra obviously doesn't play the solo part. So that's when the soloist has his own part. But at the beginning, you can see that it's a tutti, and that when you see something like that that says tutti in a Baroque piece, it's probably something you're playing with the orchestra, and it's probably, in this case, it is a refrain. So it's the same each time. So you already have that many less parts to learn, but it's still a lot of music. but at least it's not as much as you thought maybe at the beginning. So it's like a rondo form. So let's look at the very beginning. So we have that tutti refrain, which we need to learn because then you know that you know half of the piece. Yay! 16 measures and then you know half of the piece. So this key is a little bit more challenging, right? It has 4 sharps. So I hope some of you may know that it's in E major. And again, it could be a relative minor, which is C sharp minor. But we look at the last note. That's kind of a good indication. It's an E, and it also, once you start playing it a little bit, you'll realize that it's a major. And it starts on an E as well. We have a lot of E's at the beginning. You look at the tempo, allegro assai, which means very fast. So don't get scared there. You can start very slow. It's no problem. But you just have to know that if something is fast, it's probably going to be lighter in character, and it's not going to have to use as much bow. So you want to be more economical, you know. So if you go slowly, try not to play, you know, with all of your bow. You may want to play a little less and just be a little bit more careful with the kind of sound you produce right away. So let's look at how we're going to memorize this. So we have the key, we have the tempo, which tempo will come a little bit later. But that E major is challenging. I have a student working on it right now, or she kind of finished it, but it's actually the second page that's worse for the left hand. But we're just going to look at a little bit of the first page. So E major, you know, you want to familiarize yourself with that key, because that's going to be a challenge just from the start. So E major scale. I didn't talk about scales much, but it's good to know scales and arpeggios, and you know there are many books that you can use because that gives you that muscle memory also. So E major is one of those keys that is not very common in violin music, but it is difficult. So then we look at the meter. We have 3/8, so 3/8 notes to a measure. So you already know that is going to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So right from the start, just like in that minuet, which was a dance, we want to feel that dance quality. In this case, it's going to be even faster because it's not a minuet, it's an allegro. So it's going to be faster, and we have to, it's going to be more almost in one. Once you learn it in tempo, it's going to feel more like it's in one. Right? So that first pulse. So it's good to be aware of those bar lines and really know how the music is organized. So we look at the pattern. Let's say I'm standing here in my chair number 2 and looking at this. We have that E major scale, right? At the beginning, you can see that it's already outlining a little bit of the scale, but do you see that it's also outlining the arpeggio? So here I could use, I'm going to walk over to my piano real quick, just to play this passage. So you can immediately, when you play piano a little bit, you can start looking at it like a chord. So that's one characteristic about Bach's music, is that it's so complicated, but once you start looking at the chords and the harmony, it becomes simpler, a little bit simpler at least. It's not like, oh, you know, again, we're chunking here, right? We're chunking. So in this case, we can chunk as an arpeggio or as a chord. So that F sharp is just a little passing note, right? So you can immediately see, you know, you can look at your fingerings, it's just in first position there. You have a slur, so 4-note slur, one separate. You look at the rhythm. One thing you can look at the whole movement, actually this whole first page, you can see the similarities between the rhythms, right? It's a very motoric kind of movement. There's not much complication about the rhythm here. What's complicated here is actually the bowings. So you may want to study that a little extra, because that may be at first a little bit confusing. So the first measure, you have 4-note slurred and 1 note separate. Then in the next measure, you have a pattern of 2-2-2. So you can look at that. That's going to happen quite a bit in this movement. But like I said, the rhythm, So how many different rhythms do we have on this page? We have ta 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 tam, first measure. Then we have ta 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 ta. That's another one. And the fourth measure is just a held note. And I don't think there's anything else new on this page. The second page has some quicker notes, which are actually some 30 seconds, but that we don't have that page right now. So you have all these different rhythms, but they will repeat, and the bowings will repeat. So you want to work through it very slowly. You can do that two-chair method to really integrate the bowings also. So you have ta-ra-ra-ra-tam, ta-ra-ta-ra-ta-ra, and then this one is a little odd, ti-ra-ra-ta-tam, pam. It's because of that last note being accented, we want it to be on a down bow. But I've seen it done on an up bow as well. So it's going to be up to you or your teacher or whoever you're working with to decide if that bowing works for you or for the music. So let's say those four measures is our little phrase, and so we figured out that the first measure is based on the E major chord. The second measure, you can see, is more scale-like, right? And then it has these groupings. So if I have the and I also like to practice up and down the same passage, like if it's an arpeggio, even if it's written only one way, I will practice it the other way. I really like that exercise. It makes me a lot more confident about the passage. And it's very important to connect the fingers on your string, so that also playing slurred helps that. So you can practice it separate as well. To clarify, if you're having trouble with the slur, of course, play it separate first. And then the next measure, we have, like I said, more of a scale. So the note is repeated, and then we skip a note, and then we have a little scale, right? So you can chunk that little scale. And then measure 3, you have the same idea, well, very similar idea than the first measure, as you can look. You have 3 notes in a row in a scale pattern, but then you skip. In this case, I don't know if you have that awareness, but this is now B. If I skip C sharp, we have D sharp, B, F, F sharp, and then A. So again, Bach puts a harmony in there. It's not just a little melody, it's a harmony. So if you, I'm not going to ask everybody here, but it's a B major chord with a 7th, right? And then the 7th. So it's probably a dominant of some kind, which if you have a little bit of that theory knowledge, you know that B major is a dominant of E major, right? So 5th note is, and very common type of dominant is the 7th, with that 7th. So it gives us that beautiful tension, All right. Okay, that's probably enough, yes, for analyzing. Let's do some questions. We don't want to get too late. And if you want me to play anything else, I don't have to. But I just wanted to mention my CDs just real briefly. So I have this CD, which is on my website. You can find it at the beginning in the links, or maybe Anna will send you an email or something.
I shared the links a second time. I'll also put them on the Facebook event, and I'll put them on the YouTube when I post them there.
So let me just explain. The first link is Technique of the Week, which I started about 5 weeks ago, and I discuss simple techniques. Started with pizzicato and tremolo and all this kind of stuff. Me and my partner in doing this decided that the educational part would be really fun to do, since I've never done anything like that before. So I have, I think, 5 so far. There's one about harmonics, double harmonics, and all this stuff. So that's every Monday so far. Musical Moments with Marta is the name of my new YouTube channel. I have other YouTube channels, but this is the newest one, and we're going to be moving other videos slowly from the other channels. And this one also has a category called Cadenzas and Capriccios. So I recorded cadenzas when, during COVID, when I didn't have orchestra or anything to back me up, I decided to do cadenzas from concertos. But of course, not every concerto has a cadenza. So I have so far 5. I think today I'm posting another one. Capriccios will be the next part of it. And then the CDs are on, well, I only have one CD, the Myth and Romance, on my actual website. My other CDs you can purchase from me. Whoops, it's upside down. So I have a Baroque CD. I have an ensemble CD with my daughter from Millsaps College. I have a really cool CD with my daughter and my dad on accordion. We're playing some more popular music for an ensemble that was written for us, including tangos and stuff. This one is me solo. There's some with orchestra, some solo with piano. And then this is an older recording that I did back in the 90s, and I was still under Kirk. That's my married name. But it's a beautiful recital that I did with my ex-husband, actually, who was a pianist. We did a beautiful Saint-Saëns sonata and some Tchaikovsky. Anyway, so that's another CD. And you can purchase those by contacting me either on my website or through the email I posted there somewhere. And then the last information on my promotion here is about that book by Gieseking. So that may be something interesting to check out. Okay, so
Marta,
questions.
Yeah, I actually do have some memorization questions. A student texted me, but before I ask that, do you accept private students through Zoom? So if anyone here wants a coaching with you, do you do
Certainly.
that? Do you offer that?
Certainly.
Okay, nice to know. So, all right, my student had texted me earlier and said, what do you do? I know what you're going to say, but what do you do when you've memorized something wrong? Like really, really wrong. You know what I mean? Like that one note you were talking about. How do you fix it?
You're going to have to use all 4 types of memory, probably, especially the visual one. You're going to have to go back to the music and start looking at that thing, like retrain yourself. I have done that before myself. It's happened to me before. So let's see if we have. So the muscle memory is going to be a big one. You have to be aware. So repeat it only correctly. You cannot let yourself play it even once wrong, right? So you can retrain. And you can come up, you're going to have to treat it like really like a new passage in a way, right? Somehow eliminate it from your brain and all your memories, right? You have to erase it. But I don't know if you can actually erase it. You just have to replace it with the right one. So yeah, the cognitive is very important, but also being aware, and the visual one. So do I have any exercises? Well, I would just focus on that. Don't practice like the whole piece and everything. Just go to that measure and just intellectually, you have to do it intellectually at first. And like, okay, this is, and it sounds wrong too. It should sound wrong to him. It's probably in his auditory memory recorded that way wrong. Listen to some recordings with that piece, with that section, and just listen to it also. Like Victor said, listen to it over and over until it becomes programmed. And you can't help but play it right. So all these memories, I think, are going to be necessary. Yeah.
That's perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. The other question is, do you have a particular music dictionary or book that you like for, because you mentioned several times making sure that we know the terminology in the music, like con gratia, things like that. So, of course, Tom said Google, and he's right. These days we do have Google.
Yeah, that's kind of what I do. I do have a little dictionary. I have a couple dictionaries at home. They're ancient, and I just check because I still like paper and looking at books. But yeah, I do Google as well. And but there are some dictionaries. You have to be careful what kind of dictionary you're getting, because I do have a dictionary that only covers certain kind of things, like only composers and certain terms, and it's not thorough. So I don't know if you know of one. I'll be happy to buy one as well. But you may want to look on one of the shops, online, to see if there's like a really thorough dictionary. If you can't find it on Google, Yeah, we have a lot of resources now.
Well, and Tom
Really
also asked,
small. Mhm.
Tom had a really good point. He said what's really hard is the symbols. Like if you have a symbol for a trill or a roll or something, you can't really Google that.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yes.
So
Well,
how
so
would
look
you
for a
find?
book. Look for a little booklet that will have it with pictures. I think sometimes you can even get those in like guitar stores. You know, they will have those kind of dictionaries more likely at a music store with symbols. I think I've seen some like that. If not, then you may need to go to a website or some store like you know music store online that would carry maybe Shar or um, Concord Musical Supplies. I buy strings there, but I don't know if they have books. Shar will have books.
He
So
also
terminology, yeah. Mhm.
Tom also said that Wikipedia has a list of musical symbols, and William said that. So
Okay.
see, this is why I love these classes, because if I don't know something, by the time I say it, everyone else
Yeah,
teaches it.
yeah, definitely. Everybody is curious in their own way. We're all curious. Yeah, that's what binds us together. That we're all curious creatures. That's great.
So
Okay, any other questions? What's the
um,
name of that book about silence memorization? Oh, should I be looking at these questions or do you want to?
you can look. I've been looking through them, and I think asking you everything. So
Somebody's
Ivan
asking
has
about
said,
somebody's asking about the book, but somebody else already answered it.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So I got a
okay.
question on getting from
Yes.
short-term memory to long-term memory. Can you hear me?
Yes. Now I can hear you.
Okay. So I've been working on a few different bluegrass tunes with my teacher, and I'm learning them by ear because I think it stays in your head longer than if you try and memorize it off a piece of paper. That being said, I'll have the tune down. I can play it 10, 12 times. Then I go on to do something else, play a different tune, and it's not there. I need an auditory cue to pull it back into my
Uh-huh.
head.
Uh-huh. Well, like that's a very good point. Like I said earlier, we sometimes rely on one type of memory, and that's just not enough. You may have to, maybe not necessarily reading music, but it may be a good idea to read at least some, it's not that hard to read music, right?
No,
So
no,
you can learn it.
I'll eventually transcribe it into Sibelius once I've learned the tune. I'll put it
Uh-huh.
on paper.
Uh-huh. Well, so I think it's very important to have as many types of memory as you can. So that's why it's not reliable, because it's only in your ear. And yes, the sound stays in your ear a very long time. Even people with Alzheimer's can remember things in music when you sing it to them. But it's not going to be reliable, especially since you're using your body to play. I don't know, he disappeared somewhere. Okay. Especially if you're using your arms, so you're gonna have to have this muscle memory too. So you need to repeat that song with more awareness. So even if you're not reading the music, you could study your fingering. Study what fingerings am I using, and so that have that type of memory added, the muscle memory, right? Um, Cognitive and visual are gonna be a little harder without reading music. You're clicking really loudly there.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought I had muted. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. So anyway, this gentleman, is he still here?
Yeah, that's Ivan.
Okay, he disappeared from my picture.
No, I'm
Oh,
still
okay,
here.
okay. I just didn't know if I was talking to you or just general public. But I don't know if that's helpful. But if you want to consider having a visual way of looking at that piece, that's going to help you. But also muscle memory. So repeating shorter phrases, um, talking to yourself. You can also write it out in some way or another. If it's not with notes, you can write down um,
Oh, don't
numbers
get me
like
wrong. I can
fingerings.
read
Write
music.
down the fingerings. I have a student who doesn't read music very well, so at the beginning he didn't at all. So I would just write fingerings, numbers, and which string you're on. So you could do something like that. But
No,
more,
it's just a way of learning the tunes. I think bluegrass is more of an oral tradition.
Sure, sure. I understand. I understand, and I don't want to.
Eventually I write them down because I have Sibelius. I'll play on my little keyboard and I'll put it
Sure
on paper. But
so I would say perform it more, repeat it more.
Yeah.
And
The
then
idea about the
get more
fingers
comfortable
is
with it.
good. The fingering.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well. Can you?
Watching my fingers is a good thing.
Watching your fingers,
Yeah.
right? So it is visual in that sense. You can also close your eyes and imagine it, practice it in your mind. So yeah, all of those types of memory are gonna be just make
I
it
just
better
thought I
and
was
better.
getting old and I can't remember anything anymore.
Oh, come on. We're talking about memorizing so you can play it until endless, until you're very, very old. But you're not that old. So, okay. Anything else? Any other questions?
I think that was fantastic, Marta. You are wonderful, wonderful. And you can't tell because everybody's muted, but people are clapping and
Thank you. I see some more questions here, though. Don't you want me to answer any of the ones here?
I think I've been asking them for you, asking them.
Okay.
See if I missed something though, because I don't want to miss
Repertoire is
anything.
wrong. Just commit to the wrong version. Okay. Used to me okay. All right. I guess I trust you that you or somebody's put some things about the books. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I am grateful to have this opportunity to have met you all. Kind of, I don't see most of you, but I hope I'll be curious to know what you all do, like who you are, because it's kind of like I'm the only person highlighted except for a couple of you asking questions. So, how many of you play violin, or you play fiddle, right? And
He plays all kind.
okay, Victor, I know Victor. Tom, what do you play, Tom?
Typed it, but I play pretty much Celtic fiddle.
Okay, wonderful. Oh, I would love to. I would love to be.
Well, it definitely wasn't Mike Nichols.
You should be very careful what you ask for. I haven't been playing that long.
That's great. Well, Tammy is here from the Symphony, Mississippi Symphony. Hi, Tammy. She's a violist, wonderful violist. And Ruth, what do you play? Or do you play an instrument?
As Linda and Vernon know, I play cello because I
Oh, wonderful.
orchestra.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I didn't play violin, I would play cello. I love cello, but for me, the finger, I'm not used to the pressure, and so I actually don't like that feeling. My fingers are too soft.
Yeah, you do get calluses, that's for sure.
Sure. So I hope this was a little bit helpful to you as well.
Yeah, I got some good tips out of it. Thank you.
Good. And then we have Cynthia, Kimberly. I don't know, you ladies. Charlene, what do you play?
Cynthia said she plays flute, and her two sons are string players.
Okay, cool. Charlene, what do you play?
I play violin, and during the COVID times, I've kind of concentrated on old time and Scottish fiddling.
Oh,
I'm
fun.
a master of none, though.
You should, you and Jeannie. Jeannie likes to play country. Jeannie, tell us, Jeannie is my student here. Are you there, Jeannie?
I'm here.
So how do you describe your style when you play? You play guitar also, so.
I do play guitar. I'm much more comfortable with guitar than I am with the fiddle, but I play violin with Marta and I play fiddle with Tim. So I keep my brain going in two directions.
Yes, and it's good to have that classical training also to know some of
The
those.
best. Yeah, I love it.
Mm-hmm. And then Cynthia, Kimberly, what do you play?
Hi. Yeah,
Hi.
I'm actually sort of a lurker. I teach violin and viola, and I also cello, and I conduct a little adult string orchestra here in Oregon, and I teach.
Oh,
And so I'm always, I try to come to as many of these classes as I can to just pick up on tips to pass on to students. I love seeing other teachers and your approaches. And, that's been the most wonderful thing about this. So, I teach a lot about memory, but I tend to teach more from a neurological perspective. And it's so wonderful to see how you were looking at the 4 types of memory, and really how they work together. So I know I have things that I'm going to use with my students.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I learned a lot just preparing for this presentation, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead. You were going to say something?
Well, I was going to say, classically trained, I went through Bach and all of that, and it sticks, but it's not very stable. And I actually went to old time fiddle several years ago, and to learn things without music, and it has improved my classical memory immensely. It's a wonderful tool.
Yeah, we should all just practice it as much as possible. And like I said, with that 2-chair method, look at the music, yes, and be aware of everything, but then try to play it as much from memory, and just practice that feeling, the feeling of playing from memory, and not having that crutch,
Yeah.
And then we have, let's see, this was Linda, right? That was Linda. And then Vernon. There's somebody here at the end. Vernon, what do you play? Oh, sorry. Whoops. We can't hear you. Okay.
Linda and Vernon are married. She plays cello and he plays bass.
Oh, okay. Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful.
And I suspect that's why we had the feedback.
Yep.
Ah!
I did mute it, didn't I? Oh, sorry.
Yep. We're not, some of us are muted, some of us are not. So, okay. Well, thank you all so much.
Marta, one more quick question, because Charlene had asked, what part of Poland are you from?
I'm from the capital, Warsaw. Yep, I grew up there in a big city, but it's a big city, very sprawled out city. So I lived in an area that was close to forests and very close. But I lived in a kind of skyscraper, so to speak, on the 10th floor, in apartments. But we always had a garden, and we loved gardening always. In fact, in Poland, people really love gardening there because they live in so many of these concrete buildings, right? So there was no actual houses that people owned. So they really wanted their own gardens. So we had these little tiny gardens outside of the city that everybody would meet on weekends. It was a lot of fun. So are you from Poland or been to Poland? Who is this?
No, but I visited there. I visited Warsaw, Warsaw and other places. It was great.
When were you there? What year?
2019.
Oh my gosh. I haven't been there in 10 years. I'm
really
not looking very optimistic right now, but maybe soon.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and bring this to a close, because like I said, I like to respect everybody's time. I really want to say thank you to Marta for sharing your website and your email. And I know you'll be open for people to email you questions, and I'd like to encourage you guys to get a coaching with her, because just listening to your students talk, I can tell it's a great experience. So,
thank you.
And I do want to send a really special welcome to Victor. I tell you what's been the coolest thing about these classes. We've had guests from Trinidad and Belize and now Peru. And Victor, I love Cusco. I've been to Cusco. It's nice to have you here.
Yeah. Thank you, Victor, for being here. Appreciate that. And
all right, next week we have intervals and scales and arpeggios. Oh my, I forget what it's called, but it's theory. We're doing theory. Those of you guys who saw our first series of classes, Liz Alvarez assisted one of our clinicians, and she's amazing and she loves theory. And so that's going to be a lot of fun for you guys that were wondering about some of that stuff about dominant and dominant 7 and everything. Next week is your week to brush up on all that. So it'll be cool. So next week, Thursday, same bat time, same bat channel. And this should be up on the Huthmaker Violins YouTube channel tomorrow. Hopefully, if I can get it uploaded before I go to work tomorrow. So
Okay, wonderful. Thank you
right.
so much, Anna, Dixie, Buddy. Thank you so much for having me. And
Thank
good
you.
luck, everybody, memorizing your music. And what I was gonna say is that that will give you that joy of playing anytime, anywhere, and you don't have to be staring at the music, and you're training your brain also to stay young. So good luck, everybody, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.